When my best friend married my husband, they say that the people who can hurt you the most are the ones you let closest to your heart. For me, that person was Maya. Maya and I were inseparable. We shared secrets, clothes, and dreams. When I married Samir, she was my maid of honor. She stood right there, smiling at us as we took our vows. Samir was everything I ever wanted, kind, successful, and deeply in love with me. Or so I thought. Our home was filled with laughter, and for 5 years, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Whenever Maya had a breakup or a hard day at work, she was at our house. I would cook her favorite pasta, and Samir would pour the wine. We were a trio, a happy, perfect little family. I never noticed the way her eyes lingered on him when I left the room. I never noticed how he started wearing the cologne she once mentioned she liked. I was blinded by trust. The change was subtle at first. Samir started staying late at the office. "Big project, Sarah," he would say, kissing my forehead. At the same time, Maya became distant. She stopped calling me, but whenever I visited her, she seemed distracted, her phone buzzing constantly with work messages. One evening, I decided to surprise Samir at his office with dinner. When I arrived, the lights in his cabin were off, but his car was still in the parking lot. I called his phone. It rang inside the car. I walked over and looked through the window. Beside his phone lay a silk scarf, a very specific emerald green scarf. It was the one I had gifted Maya for her birthday. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by cold hands. I didn't confront them that night. I waited. I watched. I saw the deleted messages. I saw the credit card statements for hotel rooms in the city. The betrayal wasn't just a moment. It was a calculated takeover of my life. When I finally confronted Samir, he didn't even have the decency to lie for long. "We fell in love, Sarah," he said, his voice cold. "Maya understands me in ways you don't anymore." The pain was a physical weight, but the real sting came when Maya showed up at my door the next day. She didn't look guilty. She looked victorious. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "But some things are just meant to be." The divorce was a blur of legal papers and tears. Because Samir had a high-powered lawyer, and I was too broken to fight, he kept the house we had built together. 3 months after the papers were signed, I saw a post on social media. It was a picture of Maya standing in my kitchen, wearing my favorite apron. The caption read, "Finally home, Mrs. Samir Khan." They didn't just break my heart, they replaced me in my own life. They got married in a small ceremony, inviting the same friends who had toasted to my marriage just years prior. For a long time, I stayed in a dark place. I moved into a small apartment and worked long hours to forget the image of them in my bed. But life has a funny way of balancing the scales. A year later, I ran into an old mutual friend at a cafe. eventually, the conversation turned to Samir and Maya. "It's not what you think, Sarah," the friend whispered. "The spark died the moment the affair became a marriage. Samir is working even later now, and Maya, she's paranoid. She knows that if he cheated with her, he will cheat on her." One rainy afternoon, I was walking out of a grocery store when I saw a woman struggling with bags near a flashy car. It was Maya. She looked tired. The glow was gone. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she looked years older than she was. She saw me. For a moment, we just stood there in the rain. "Are you happy?" I asked. It wasn't a taunt. I genuinely wanted to know if the destruction of my life was worth it for her. She looked away, her knuckles white as she gripped her shopping bags. "He's seeing his secretary, Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just like he was seeing me when he was with you." I felt a strange sense of peace, not because she was hurting, but because I realized I hadn't lost anything valuable. I had lost a liar. She had won a man she could never trust. I walked away from her that day and didn't look back. I realized that my friend didn't take my husband. She took my problem. She was living in a house built on lies, while I was finally building a life on the truth. I started my own business. I traveled. I met people who didn't know the old Sarah. Today, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a victim. I see a survivor. The woman who stole my husband didn't win, because while she's at home waiting for a man who will never be faithful, I am free. And freedom is the best revenge. After that rainy encounter with Maya, I expected to feel a rush of "I told you so." But instead, I felt a heavy silence. I went home to my small, sunlit apartment, a place that didn't have his smell or her betrayal lingering in the corners. I started thinking about the things Maya didn't know. She didn't know that Samir hides his credit card bills when he's losing money on stocks. She didn't know that he hates the sound of someone humming in the morning, something she used to do constantly to seem cheerful. I realized that while she was busy trying to be me, she was slowly erasing herself. Late one Tuesday night, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Sarah." The voice was shaky, muffled by the sound of glass breaking in the background. It was Samir. "Sarah, I made a mistake. She's not you. She's demanding everything. She's turned the house into a museum of her ego. I can't breathe." I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the man I once worshipped crumble on the other end of the line. A year ago, I would have cried. A year ago, I would have begged him to come home. But that night, I felt nothing but a strange, clinical curiosity. "Samir," I said, my voice steady, "you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose a woman who was willing to betray her best friend. Why are you surprised that she's now betraying you?" There was a long silence. I could hear his heavy breathing. "She found out about the secretary," he whispered. "She's threatening to take the house. Everything we fought for in the divorce. She's going to strip me bare. I almost laughed. The irony was poetic. The very house they conspired to take from me was now the battlefield where they would destroy each other. Good luck, Samir, I said, and I hung up. I spent the next several months focusing on my own growth. I took up painting, something Samir always called a waste of time. I filled my walls with bright oranges, deep blues, and aggressive reds. I was painting my way out of the gray fog they had left me in. I also started a blog, anonymously at first, about betrayal and recovery. Thousands of women reached out. I realized I wasn't alone. Maya wasn't the only best friend who turned into a snake, and Samir wasn't the only husband who chased a shiny new toy. Their story was a cliché. Mine was becoming an epic. 2 years after the divorce, I was invited to a high-profile gallery opening. My art was finally being recognized. As I stood there, holding a glass of sparkling water, I saw a man looking at my main piece, a painting of a bird breaking through a glass cage. He didn't know my history. He didn't know I was the woman whose husband left her. He just saw the artist. "This piece has so much strength," he said, turning to me. "It feels like someone who finally learned how to breathe." I smiled. "It's the self-portrait of a soul," I replied. I eventually heard through the grapevine that the house was sold. Samir and Maya had a messy, public legal battle. They lost the house to the bank because neither could afford the mortgage alone, and their reputations were ruined in our social circles. Maya moved back to her parents' house in another city. Samir was living in a studio apartment, still chasing the ghost of his youth. They thought they were building a kingdom on the ruins of my heart. But they forgot that a foundation built on betrayal is made of sand. If you are listening to this, and you are in the middle of your own heartbreak, if your Maya has taken your Samir, listen closely. Let them have him. A man who can be taken is not a prize. He is a liability. A friend who can steal is not a loss. She is a lesson. You might feel like your world is ending, but look at me. I am standing in a world that is bigger, brighter, and more honest than the one I left behind. My name is Sarah. I am no longer a wife. I am no longer a best friend to traitor. I am an artist. I am a traveler. I am a woman who knows her worth. The shadow that once lived in my home is gone, and in its place, I have finally found the light. I didn't lose my friend, and I didn't lose my husband. I found myself.